the reason why human beings have tafawut. So tafawut, are differences, dissimilarities. They're basically when Allah says you will not see in His creation any tafawut, He means the creation is equal in its createdness. So there's no dissimilarities. Everything is equal in its being, that it shares in being. And then the tamayyuz is with what He prefers. He prefers some things over other things. But we're all equal before the law. It's that concept. I mean, we should be in a just government. Everybody should be equal before the law. But people aren't equal in terms of their merit, in terms of what they do with their lives. So He's going to explain why there's inequality amongst human beings. So He says, أسباب ذلك سبعة أشياء. There's 7 reasons for this. الأول اختلاف الأمزجة وتفاوت الطينة. The first are the differences in the mizaj, in the composite nature of the person. So if you have a choleric nature, you're going to be more inclined to study than somebody with a sanguine nature. So your nature is going to determine certain things. It will handicap you in some ways, and then it will give you advantages in the other, because sanguine has advantages over choleric and other things. So he's talking about these humors, which, if you want a really interesting modern interpretation of them, because they are valid, they might not be to the degree that, say, Galen understood them, but it was Ibn Sina who introduced a lot of the psychological qualities of the humors. So Galen looked at them from the actual fluids that showed up, and it was based on these fluids when people get sick, the different types of sicknesses. In any case, he says, وَاخْتِرَافَ الْخِلْقَةِ, and also the difference in their the khilqa could be physiognomy, so it's basically, it could also mean character, but it's really here, he's talking about the actual physiognomy of a person, how they're built. وكما أشير إليه فيما يروى أن الله تعالى لما أراد خلق آدم أمر أن تؤخذ قبضة من كل أرض فجاء بنو آدم على قدر طينتها جاء منهم الأحمر والأبيض والأسود والسهل والحزن والطيب والخبيث. So this hadith is a very interesting hadith which Abu Dawud and Tirmidhi relate from Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. He says that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala desired to create the Adam, He commanded that there be a qabda, which is a handful from all over the earth. So the children of Adam come based on the places where that earth was gathered. So he said, and from that you see red people, white people, black people, easy people, difficult people, based on the type of dirt, the terrain. Good people, tayyib and khabith, people that are very fecund in their productivity, and other people that aren't, because there's earth that doesn't produce much. وإلى نحو هذا أشار الله تعالى بقوله البلد الطيب يخرج نباته بإذن ربه والذي خبث لا يخرج إلا نكدا. So a good place, right? A good place is like good, that the only thing that will come out of it is good, right? So بلد الطيب يخرج نباته بإذن ربه. So it produces good agriculture. Whereas a place that khabutha, that it's not a beneficial place, then nothing comes out of it of any benefit. And then he says, هو الذي يصوركم في الأرحام كيف يشاء. He fashions you in your wombs, in the wombs of your mothers, as he pleases. In other words, in terms of, you're going to have this genetic material. So min nutfatin amshaj. So all that mashij that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Insan, that's in Surah Al-Insan, by the way. So it says the nutfa, which is singular, is amshaj, which is plural. This is very unusual in Arabic to have this. It's considered an ishkal by the commentators. But it's because the nutfa is made of DNA from all of your female ancestor, from all the maternal side, all the way back to Adam, and then from all the maternal side, all the way back to Adam. And the Prophet ﷺ, in a hadith in Imam Ahmad's Musnad, he said that all of a person's ancestors participate in his coming into being, from Adam all the way down to your parents. So this, I mean, this is really extraordinary knowledge that the Prophet ﷺ was given about all these different things. And so that's the first reason he gives. And we would call that today genetics. So people differ based on their genetic background. And we don't choose that. We can't choose that. There's people that have really good genes. We say, oh, he's got good genes. And then there's people that really suffer a lot because of weak genes. So that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does whatever Allah pleases. And we should be grateful with what we were given. But that is a consideration. You should have compassion for people. You know, it gives you more reason, especially if you're healthy. Although there are reasons on the Yawm al-Qiyamah, the healthy people actually envy all the sick people. Dunya. والثاني اختلاف أحوال الوالدين في الصلاح والفساد. The second is the house you grew up in. It's the quality of your parents, from their righteousness or their corrupted nature. So if you grew up in a corrupt house, it's going to have a huge impact on you. And that's why the sin of righteous children, of children from righteous parents, is worse with Allah than the sin of children who come out of a bad house. If you had righteous parents that raised you properly and then you go against that, no excuse with God. Whereas somebody who grew up in an environment where they weren't raised with proper understanding, then there's more wiggle room there. So then he says, so ذلك أن الإنسان قد يرث من أبويه آثار ما هما عليه من جميل السيرة. He could inherit from the parents also. So not only is there just growing up in the house, but there's also a kind of wiratha. And you see this I saw this very clear in Mauritania. It's well known that so many of the righteous scholars, their sons have that quality, even in memory and ability to learn and things like this. So you'll see this. So that's a really interesting point that he's making. فالخلق من جميل السيرة والخلق وقبيحها, from good character and also bad character. كما يرث مشابهتهما في خلقتهما, just as they will inherit the resemblance in their physiognomy. So you see, oh, that he looks just like his dad, or he looks just like she looks just like her mother, or she looks just like her father, right? It's like George Bernard Shaw. A very beautiful woman proposed to him, and she said, just think of our children, you know, with your brains and my looks. He said, my concern would be if they got my looks and your brains. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قال الله تعالى وكان أبوهما صالحا. Their father was righteous. That was the seventh grandfather, according to the tafsir. So because that man was righteous, Allah wanted good for the children. Now there's a what's called mafhum al-mukhalafa, which he gets into. So yeah, here. وعلى نحوه روي أنه قال في التوراة إني إذا رضيت باركت إن بركتي لا تبلغ البطن السابع. So it's written in the Torah, and the Prophet said, حدثوا عن بني إسرائيل ولا حرج. You can quote the Bible and not feel any difficulty in that. The Prophet permitted quoting the Bible. So he said, it said in the Torah that if I'm pleased, I bless, and my blessing will reach the seventh generation. وَإِذَا سَخِطْتُ لَعَنْتُ. But if I'm angry, then they get the la'na. And my la'nati, which is the, you know, it's that good is not wanted for them. That will reach the seventh generation. تنبيها على أن الخير والشر الذي يكتسبه الإنسان ويتخلق به يبقى أثره موروثا. So this is important. it's not the sin, because we know لا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى. No soul bears the sins of another soul, but the effects of the sins. So the effects of the sins are inherited. And this is why a lot of what's happening in the Muslim world are for things that were done 100 years ago. Many of the problems, the betrayal that happened. But these are the children that have to bear the burden of the effects of those sins. The alliances that were made, the treacheries, the betrayals, all these things that happened. The fifth column, there were all these fifth columns in the Muslim world that enabled the colonialists to do what they did. So these are all problems. So that's and also the Torah says also that a son is not, it has the same, because that's the في صحف إبراهيم لا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى. No soul bears the sins of another. The Prophet ﷺ said that the illegitimate child, Ibn Zina, I mean, they don't even use that word anymore. I don't know what they say now, child born out of wedlock. These aren't even acceptable terms today, I don't think. But what's traditionally called Ibn Haram, which is the child of an unsanctified alliance. That child, the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يحمل من وزر أبويهما شيئا. Like, he does not carry the sin of nothing of the sin of the two parents. But he gets the effects of the sin. It's makruh for them to lead the prayer, even if they become scholars. So these are the effects of the sin. But that person, him or herself, does not have the sin. And now we have people are going to come into Islam who don't have, lineage or parents. One of the things Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayyah told me, which I think is the proper thing, he said if their parents were in a common law, like it wasn't just, if they know their father and they were in a common law relationship, he said we should consider them of lineage. Yeah, because it's become like an urf in the culture. So this والثالث اختلاف ما تتكون منه النطفة التي يتكون منها الولد ودم الطمث الذي يتربى به الولد. So the next one is the nutrition of the mother. So the type of nutrition that she was getting, and we know now that even IQs are less. For people that have malnutrition is a major cause of problems, of developmental problems in the children. So the healthy woman is very important. تأثير بحسب طيب ما تكون منه وخبثه ولهذا قال تخيلوا لنطفكم بأن العرق دساس. So choose where you plant your seed, because it's going to have an effect. So the womb is very important, the type of womb that will carry the seed. But seed also. وقال الناكح غارس فلينظر أحدكم أين يضع غرسه. The one who mates is a farmer. So look where one of you plants his seed. And the Prophet ﷺ also said, وإياكم وخضر الدمن. قيل ما خضر الدمن؟ قال المرأة الحسناء في منبت سوء. That beware of the the khadra is something green and beautiful, like a foliage that's beautiful, but diman is a bad source. So it's saying, somebody could be you could be very attracted to them, they're very charming, but look at their home, what type of house they came from, because that will have a lot to do with the type of character they're going to have and how they're going to behave. So those are very important. So he said, "Al-mar'atu al-hasna'u fi manbati su." It's a beautiful woman from a bad home. الرابع اختلاف ما ينعقد به من الرضاع من طيب المطعم. Sorry. So that, I think, then he's saying it's that one. The third one is going to be more the genetics. Because the fourth one is the actual nutrition. So I think that would go with the first one, just from a different perspective. He's looking at the quality of the mother in particular. And then this one, اختلاف ما ينعقد به من الرضاع من طيب المطعم الذي يربى به وَلِتَأْثِيرَ الرَّضَعُ يُغَيِّرُ الطِّبَاعَ. So the Prophet ﷺ said, wet nursing will change the character. And there's a hadith, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالْحَمْقَى, watch out for the simpleton wet nurse, because فَإِنَّهَا تُغَذِّي, because she's giving more than. And we know there's a study that was done by the Israelis actually about just the quality of the breast milk and the time. So up to a year, there was actually the intelligence was higher in the child if they got breast milk for up to a year. After that, they said it was negligible, the difference. But they did a broad study on this, on the importance of breast milk in terms of intelligence. والخامس اختلاف أحوالهم في تأديبهم وترقينهم وتطبيعهم وتعويدهم العادات الحسنة والقبيحة، فحق الوالد على الوالدين أن يؤخذ بالآداب الشرعية وإخطار الحق بباله وتعويده فعل الخير، كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: مروا بالصلاة ل7 واضربوهم عليها ل10. So the fifth is the how they're actually disciplined, and what they're taught, and also what they're naturalized into from habits. So good habits or bad habits. The right of the child from the parent is that they give them the adab of the Sharia, and to constantly remind ikhtar al-haqi bibalihi, like to bring to his mind al-haq, the truth, reality, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the deen, or all the things that are important. وَتَعْوِيدِهِ فِعْلَ الْخَيْرِ, and to habituate the child to doing good, because virtue begins as a habit. You habituate, and that's why the Prophet ﷺ, for instance, a man came to him, كَانْ يَشْتَكِي قَسَاوَةَ قَلْبِهِ, like he said, I find a hardness in my heart. He said, go find orphans and like pat them on the head, right? امسح رأس اليتيم وأطعم المسكين, and feed poor people. Because by habituating yourself to acts of kindness, it's going to have an impact on the heart. So whenever you habituate yourself to things, it's going to benefit. So that's what he's saying. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ said, command them to prayer at 7, but discipline them in doing it at 10. So before 10, there's no discipline. You just tell them, go pray. And if they pray, they pray. And if they keep playing, just leave them alone. But once they get to 10, then no, there's a discipline. And it's obviously not any physical violence. You know, the Prophet ﷺ never left a bruise. He never struck a woman or a child. But he said, if you do a discipline physically, do not leave a bruise. And, you know, I mean, like a spanking is not a bruise. Right? If you span, then that's why there's a lot of flesh there, right? It's cushioned for a reason, not just for sitting, but for disciplining children also. You can't do that anymore, I think. So it's illegal in some countries. They'll take your kids away, you know. And the Bible, spare the rod, spoil the child. That's what they said, the Bible. It's in Proverbs. Now all these kids are in total rebellion. Nothing you can do. And they look at you like with utter brazenness. If you try to like tell some of these young kids. I mean, I knew things were looking bad. Several years ago, when I was living in Santa Clara, and these kids were out. You know, I put stuff out for them to have. They have those pickup days, and they were just trashing it and breaking glass. And I came outside. They couldn't have been more than 10 or 11. And I said, hey, what are you guys doing? And they just, one of them, the leader, you know, there's always a leader. Yeah. He just looked at me and he said, so what are you going to do? And I was stuck. You know? Like, checkmate, man. You know, that's a bad sign, because when I was a kid, if an adult accosted you, I mean, my father told me that he was in Dartmouth College when he was a young man. And he went to see Robert Frost recite poetry. And he said that there was this Dartmouth student there who was totally slouched in his seat. You know, he's like in the front row. And he said frost came out, and he was a crusty guy. I mean, he was known for he was a pretty tough guy. But he came out and he looked at this man. He said, "Young man, sit up." And he said my dad said the man just jumped up and just like straight as an arrow. And for the rest of that night, he said, my dad would look over and the guy was just like, I mean, can you imagine doing that today? You couldn't do that today. They would literally, like, who do you think you are? You can do whatever I want. But that was the decorum. And when you lose decorum in a civil society, you lose civility. That's why it's called civil society. We'll just go back to the jungle, right? The law of the jungle. Might makes right. So, very important. So then he says, وَيَجِبُ أَنْ يُصَانْ عَنْ مُجَالَسَةِ الْأَرْضِيَاءِ, company of the children. Like the parents have to really, this is still in number 5, they really have to be careful about who their children spend time with, because he says, فِي حَالِ صِبَاهُ كَالشَّمَعِ, they're like wax when they're young. يَتَشَكَّرُ بِكُلِّ شَكْرٍ يَتَشَكَّرُ بِهِ, they will take the form of every form that they are affected by. when يحسن في عينه المدح والكرامة ويقبح عنده الذم والمهانة. And also that they should see praise as a good thing and noble, and they should see blame and being humiliated as something they want to avoid. So the child should see these as good things. They should want to be praised. There's a point where hopefully they have to get over that, because then we only want to be praised by Allah. But that's very important for the child, to want to do good, to do things that are good. And then he says, وَيُبَغَّضْ إِلَيْهِ الْحِرْصُ عَلَى الْمَأْكَلِ وَالْمَشْرَبِ, and also that he should be made not to desire to be covetous about food, like always have ithar, that they want to prefer others. I was in Saudi Arabia, and I have a friend who's in advertising, but there was an ad for pizza, and it was all these Saudi young men with their ghutara and there's only one piece of pizza left, and they're all going for it. Right, and that was the ad, which is that was obviously done by somebody that knows nothing about Arabian culture, right? Because how are they going to show? No, that's faddal ya akhi. You take it. So they don't want to add where the food that looks like they don't want it. But that's our culture. That's the Muslim culture. Is that the last one you should offer somebody else. You don't take it for yourself. So that's really important to do that. And then mukharafat al-shahwa, going against their appetites, and also avoiding like silliness and stupidity. Also not sleeping a lot during the day, because it becomes a source of laziness. وَيُعَوِّدَ التَّأَنِّي, deliberation فِي أَفْعَالِهِ وَأَقْوَالِهِ, to deliberate before they do anything or speak. وَيُمْنَعْ مِنْ مُفَاخَرَةِ الْأَقْرَانِ, and that they shouldn't boast to their friends about things that they've done. ومن الضرب والشتم والعبث والاستكثار من الذهب والفضة, all these things, gold and silver. And وقال بعد الحكماء من سعة الإنسان يتفق له في صباه من يعوده تعاطي الشريعة. And one of the sages said that it's from the felicity of a human being that they find someone when they're young who habituates them to following the Sharia until they actually reach adulthood. And then they know what they're responsible for, and they find that it's consistent with what they had been habituated to, and this will strengthen their inner sight and enable them to fulfill their determination. The sixth one, اختلاف ما يتخصص به ويخالطه فيأخذ طريقته فيما يتمذهب به. The sixth one is the difference in what is peculiar to that person, what they, ويخالطه, what they associate with. فيأخذ طريقته ويتمذهب به. So those, the person that's going to have influence on them and the path that they'll follow, because human beings by their nature are mimetic. We follow other people, and this is why there was a documentary called it was called The Merchants of Cool. And it was how there's people that actually go to places to find who the cool people are, and then they market those things. So for instance, like hush puppies, when I was a kid, they had these shoes called hush puppies. Well, it turned out that these cool characters in New York started wearing hush puppies. So they started marketing hush puppies, but then once it becomes common, the cool people don't want to do it anymore because it's not cool. So there's this whole culture of imitating, like it's cool. Like, and you'll see this, actors have a massive impact on people. Ray-Bans, you know, like glasses, sunglasses that people wear. And even how people talk, they'll imitate. Like when James Dean showed up in the 1950s, he changed everything. Marlon Brando, these people had a huge impact on the youth because they wore T-shirts with rolled up sleeve, and people didn't used to do things like that. But once it was popularized, and now you have all these what they call influencers, social media influencers that people want to imitate, to be like them, to be cool. But the thing is, it's not cool to imitate. Cool people are cool because they don't imitate, right? And so you're just an idiot. So then, if you're going to imitate, who do you imitate? You have to imitate the best of creation. The paragon, the perfection of God's creation. I mean, I remember once, somebody said something to Marabt al-Hajj, and he went, subhanallah. And he just did that, like that. And then I saw in Shama'il of Tirmidhi that if the Prophet if something surprised him, كَانَ يَقْلِبُ كَفَّهُ. He would do that. So he was imitating the best of creation. You don't have to do that. I mean, lovers do that. You'll often find in marriages that the spouse will start doing things that the spouse does, right? That's very common because it's love, and you imitate the one you love. And so when you love the Prophet ﷺ, you want to imitate him. So that's very important. Then he says, عَنَ الْمَرْءِ لَا تَسَلْ وَسَلْ عَنْ قَرِينِهِ. So don't ask about a man, but ask about the company he keeps, because that's going to tell you who that man is. The seventh one, اختلاف اجتهاده في تزكية نفسه بالعلم والعمل حين استقلاله بنفسه. The seventh is really important. And this is the difference in human effort in working on themselves with knowledge and action once they become independent. That is a huge game changer. Just your own personal effort. And people overcome a lot of those other ones through that last one. Like people will overcome a lot of those previous ones through that. Even physiologically, people overcome great. I mean, I'm not using this as an example, but, well, I am, but don't do this. But I saw this man who had no hands, but he learned to play piano with his feet. And he could actually play piano with his feet. That's not something, I'm encouraging to do. But the point is, he wanted to learn something, and he overcame an incredible obstacle, which is not to have hands, which you need to play piano. But he showed that actually you could do it with your feet. And there are many examples of that for people that overcome immense difficulties, physical and otherwise.